Hello and welcome to another episode of the Golden Hour Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Mays. This show is brought to you by the Polar Pro Studio, and today's guest is the one and only Jevin Dovey. I need a soundboard with that in there. Actually, you know what? I think I have that. I think I have some cheering. Yeah,
well,
Jevin Dovey, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Now, this is actually Jevin's, fourth time on the show? Or third? I don't remember.
I don't know. Maybe we should have looked at it before we started.
Jevin is a good friend of mine. If you've listened to the show, you know that he and I call each other regularly. And I recommend everybody find a creator, somebody who's in the same field as you to call, because it's really nice to have somebody like Jevin who understands the YouTube struggles, the video production world, and also he's a father just like me, and his wife is expecting another one, and congrats to them. Let's do a soft clap for that. You're gonna have a am I allowed to say a baby boy?
Yeah, I mean, right? we're not keeping it out of the we haven't been
hiding it. You haven't been hiding it.
We haven't been hiding it, but we haven't been announcing it. I haven't put it on my social media or anything like that, but it's not like we're hiding it. I just don't care to put too much of my personal life on my social media. But yeah, I mean, to reiterate what Dave was saying, it is good to have a circle of people around you that you trust and you can call up whenever and bounce ideas off of, or just have conversations with, because there's a lot of things that we go through being a creator, sitting in an office and just talking to ourselves in our heads and talking to our cameras, that we feel like we're doing something wrong. But in reality, it's, everyone's going through the same struggles. I keep finding that the more I talk to other creators, the more we're all going through the same thing. So it's good to have a network.
Totally. And I'm really grateful for you too this year, because I know you had to endure a lot of my complaining, because I went from being a YouTuber to not all year, and it was a big struggle for me. And I think I changed my mind.
How are you feeling now?
I'm excited. I'm really excited to just go for it in 2022. I'm going freelance starting February 1st. And I even started filming. I didn't tell you this, but I started filming a video this morning, and it went really well. It was a lot of fun. But your channel has changed and grown a lot. You're over 700,000 subs now, which is incredible. So over actually 758,000 subs. Way to go, dude! We're at? That's amazing. That's it's
crazy.
That's getting amazingly closer and closer to 1 million, which is nuts.
So if you go on Social Blade and you look at future projections, on Christmas, it was 1 year out from hitting 1 million. So that's it's a good way to count to see how Social Blade, if it's actually that accurate, because we'll see by next Christmas if I have 1 million.
Wow. I know that's a goal of yours to hit 1 million. And if you're not a subscriber already, what are you doing? Go over to Jevin Dovey's YouTube channel. All you gotta do is search Jevin, Jeven, and it'll come up, because he's the one and only Jevin, which is pretty awesome.
It's the only one I've found. Yeah. I mean, I've come across a few Jevins in my lifetime, but very random. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this year you kind of started, you kind of became the drone guy almost by accident. Some of your videos really just went viral. These amazing DJI Mavic tutorials. You did these really long form, kind of exhaustive reviews and beginner guide videos. And you continue to do that this year with a couple of products. But you've also done other projects this year, going out, traveling, and doing these amazing films, overlanding stuff, hiking, and kind of having really a filmmaking kind of storyline attached to these films. And then it gives you all this amazing B-roll to talk about in future videos as well. It's really been a goal of yours this whole year to kind of get out there and do as many of these as you could. And you ended up doing quite a few, and they turned out looking gorgeous. Can you talk about kind of that transition and some of those ideas and those amazing projects you did this year, traveling all over mostly the western areas of the United States?
Yeah. I mean, I've always wanted to do adventure and travel. If you look back in the history of my channel, it actually started out as a travel vlog with me and my wife. And we had a year where we had buddy passes for United. My aunt's a flight attendant. And so we would just jump on a plane and go travel. That was kind of how I started my YouTube channel. And it was like a creative outlet from my production company, because my production company is completely separate than my YouTube. It's like two completely different niches. And my production company is just, it's very much, it gets repetitive. And so, you know, I started YouTube as a creative outlet just to make vlogs and have fun. And then when the DJI Mavic 2, it was the DJI Mavic Pro, when that first came out, I did videos around it. They exploded. It kind of sent me in the direction of doing like filmmaking and like going down that rabbit hole. And it's just kind of evolved over time. And I've been doing less and less of the adventure and travel. But really, right before the pandemic, I had an opportunity to go to Thailand and shoot a VR 180 project with YouTube. And I was like getting ready to start doing more of that kind of content. And then the pandemic hit pretty much the same week that my daughter was born. So it was just kind of like things compounded on top of each other where, you know, it just, you can't travel. I wasn't going to travel anyways with a new baby. And it was just, you know, a lot of things were happening at that time. But recently in the last year, I've been pushing to do more of these trips and get more into the kind of adventure storytelling that I want to do, and finding a way to blend it with my current audience, because just going out there and doing like a climbing film isn't going to be, it's not going to, it's only going to hit a very small portion of my audience. Whereas if I go out and do a video around Mavic 3, that's going to blow up on my channel. So I've been trying to find a way to blend those two worlds. Did I lose audio again? Your
audio slowly started dying. How about this? Why don't you switch to the, okay, I'm just going to leave this part in. So basically, Jevin's mic is battery powered. I think it's a phantom power or something, right? Mm-hmm. And then as we've been talking, it's like been slowly dying and getting weaker and weaker.
Okay, switch it. You have to stop recording and then we can do it.
Okay, so we've just now picked up recording again. Say hi, Jevin.
Hi, can you hear me better now?
Yes. So this is a great. Okay. What are we using right now as a microphone? Because this is actually a great little mini review.
Yeah. So this is the MacBook, the new MacBook Pro, 14-inch. I got the M1 Max. Yeah, you probably don't need the M1 Max, but it works well.
Well, Apple says that the new microphones are studio-level microphones, in quotations. So we're putting that to the test right now. Just Great. Be wary of your hand motions and stuff, because those are the things that it picks up the best. But there you go. Oh man, I'm so sorry about all the hassle we've dealt with today. We've had some technical problems.
It's all right. So going back, what I was saying, I was just saying in 2021, I've been trying to bridge that gap of, you know, doing the adventure stuff while being able to still incorporate filmmaking, photography, you know, the tutorial stuff that I do all into one. And then also being able to do it with, you know, a 21-month-old and a new baby on the way. So it's been an interesting year, but I think I've started to figure out the kind of content that I enjoy making, and something that is kind of a hybrid of what I was doing the last few years and where I want to go moving forward.
You know, we talk about it all the time in our phone calls when we, you know, accidentally compare ourselves to other creators. And then we're like, oh, wait, hold on. This person we're talking about is like 10 years younger and they don't have any kids. They're not married. They have the ability to literally hustle like nonstop all day, every day. I was doing that when I was in my 20s. And that's what has allowed me to do this as a career in my 30s. But now that I'm a married man with kids, like my priorities have shifted, and that's totally fine. Like depending on what stage you're in life, if you're getting advice from Mr. Beast, a 23-year-old single guy with no kids, like, I mean, he's got great advice in terms of what works on YouTube. But if you're trying to emulate that work ethic and that type of lifestyle, like, you know, I've chosen to be married with kids. Like it's a different, completely different story.
It is. And I think that's one of the things that like plagues a lot of creators is they start looking at what everyone else is doing, and everyone has a different story. Everyone has a different approach and a different time frame that they can do their content in. Some people have kids, some people are married, and some people are, can go jump on a plane and fly out to across the world and go make some videos for the next month. And so it's tough because, like, as a creator, you have all these aspirations that you want to do, and it's figuring out, where does it make sense for me to do the kind of content that I want to do, but also is enjoyable to watch for an audience, and is also like just realistic. And yeah, if you're comparing yourself to the Mr. Beast of the world, the Arax, like, those guys are young and they're able to just like put all their time and effort and all their money into making YouTube videos, and they don't have anything else they have to worry about. Whereas when you have a family and you have to be home, you can't just be gone all the time. Like, yeah, you gotta keep checking yourself and like take a step back and really just look at your situation and figure out where can you make content that makes sense, with what kind of workload and what kind of family life you have.
Yeah, I've been real impressed with you, like, talking through your whole year, just being able to hear what's going on in your life with the Fit Life stuff, and then with your YouTube stuff, but then also balancing time with Jalen and your wife and stuff. I mean, it's rough having all this stuff, being self-employed, but it's also really fulfilling and something that I miss a lot, being able to do my own thing throughout the day rather than working for someone else. I'm getting ahead of myself because I'll be there soon, but
I mean, it's a balance for sure. Like, there's ups and downs. Like, I have a production company, and with that production company, we get super busy. So in September, I think we shot 25 days. So like, there's zero time to do YouTube. So I had to make a bunch of videos before that, and then had to get ready to start making videos again right after that period. And I just knew during that, month, I wasn't able to really think about YouTube. And you start approaching your content different when you know what limitations you have to work within. And that's why I've never like changed my channel and gone full into adventure filmmaking. Like, that is almost a dream in a way, but it doesn't make sense if I want to be consistent and I want to, be able to upload content that has value. I still have that. I need to find that balance where I can do these stories and these adventure films, but not have to, be gone every week on an adventure, because they are very time consuming.
Yeah. And again, people in that particular niche, if they're married, it's just two people living in a van often, or they are single, people with no kids. So, you don't see many family travel influencers.
They're out there for sure. But for those of you who do have a family who don't like being on camera, don't worry, you can still do YouTube.
Totally.
I mean, that's, my wife was part of my channel at the beginning. We were doing the travel vlogging thing, and she didn't like it. So like, she stopped being on the channel. Like, she'll make an appearance here and there, but, in reality, this is my thing. This is kind of my business that I've grown. And so I treat it like that. Like, I take off weekends now, and I just don't do YouTube on weekends. I might upload, but that's, I upload it during the week and then it releases. But I'm really trying to create this separation because my life isn't YouTube. And the issue is, I see a lot of creators out there that are getting burned out because their life becomes YouTube, and you have to treat it like a business. You can't just do it 24 hours a day.
100%.
7 days a week.
What's one of your favorite projects that you did this year? If you can think back on.
Yeah.
On I think the films you did.
I think most recently, one of my favorites has been, there's been a few that I've really enjoyed making. So I went up to Washington. I climbed Mount Shuckson, which was, it's a peak I've done before, but I did it with Insta360. So I took their little Go 2 camera, and I filmed the entire adventure using the Go 2. So it was a great kind of exercise in limitation. Like, I'm only using this little POV camera, and I have to shoot a narrative that is interesting to watch. the climb itself, I've already done it. So for me, it wasn't like a new adventure, but it was something that I kind of had experience doing. So it was a little bit, I chose that because of my knowledge of that mountain in the past, and I knew I could get some really cool footage. But it was a great kind of experiment to limit myself. In terms of new experiences, I went up to Alaska and took the Mavic 3 out for to go get footage, and I ended up hanging out with Jake Sloan for a week, who's another awesome creator on this platform, and the two of us just went and explored all these cool places of Alaska. I mean, every day he took me to a new spot, and we were just trying to capture amazing footage. But at the same time, we ended up on this crazy adventure where we had a ton of failures with like the drone failing, software failing, and just like it ended up being a really cool story and a fun experience.
I mean, some of this footage that you got there, if you're watching the video, you should be able to see it. And I don't know if it's streaming well with this app that we're using, Jevin, but in the recording it will be. I mean, some of these ice almost sculptures, if you will, like they just look so
the Columbia
epic.
Glacier. Yeah. So that's a huge glacier up in Alaska, and we Jake knows a friend who has a helicopter, and so we basically got a private helicopter tour of all these mountains in Alaska. Wow. And she literally like pulled the helicopter right up to the glacier, and we were able to fly drones all over it. So I mean, it's one of those experiences that was unexpected. Like we didn't know this was going to happen. We knew that we were going to go hang out with Lee, the helicopter pilot. But then she's like, let's go here, let's go here, let's go here. And it was an insane experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gorgeous stuff. And you also had the Ronin, or what's it called? The 4D or whatever.
4D.
DJI. You had that as well.
It was cool. I like that camera.
Yeah, man, I want to talk about all the gear stuff when we get to that. But yeah.
Yeah, lots of new gear coming, or lots of new gear that came this year. We'll see when supply chain issues kind of,
Yeah, that was kind of the theme. That was the theme of the year. Was 2021 was supply chain issues. Everything was backed up. My dad ordered an A7S III for his films that he's been working on. It took 4 months for him to get it. If you ordered a camera like the C70 or the A7S III last year when it first came out, you're like lucky that you got all that, because now it's like super backed up and ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, I've looked at cameras. Like I was interested in getting an A1 for a while, and then it was backed up, and it ended up being to the point where I was like, I'll just stick with my A7S III.
Probably a smart move.
Yeah. I mean, the A1's great. I've used it on some shoots. Like I've rented it. It would be a cool camera to have like 8K just like with me when I go to some of these places to get some good stock footage. But
that's a good point.
Yeah. I don't need it. The A7S Mark III is like the ideal camera for what I do. And there, like you're just kind of jumping into the FOMO with all these new cameras a lot of times. And it's like,
yeah,
you got to take a step back and look. Like gear is good now. All the gear is good. Like
it really is.
You can pick up any new camera nowadays and get amazing looking footage. So it really comes down to, focusing more on story and focusing more on, what your audience wants to watch. And that's what I've been trying to figure out. Like, get away from just talking about gear. And in 2022, like, I don't want to just sit around at my desk and do desk reviews anymore. I'm going to try to limit the amount of times I'm sitting here talking to camera. Like I want to go out and do stuff and tell stories from different adventures. So I think just gear's always going to be a topic. It's always going to be something that we're interested in, like what's new, what's unique about it. But I think the whole gear evolving to the degree where every new camera was such a big release. Now it's like, well, every camera's good. So new releases just have different kind of things that you might want if you're specifically doing this one type of activity.
Yeah, it's getting more into the niche market now, because all the baselines have been covered and everything has a flip screen on it, which is awesome. There was a period of time where it was like, why are you not putting a flip screen on it? And then why is the autofocus so bad? And like now almost everything has been fixed from most manufacturers.
Not Panasonic.
Except Panasonic with the autofocus.
So bummed. I was a Panasonic user for years, and I switched over to Team Sony this year. Now I'm like all in on Sony.
let's start there. That's one of the topics that I want to talk about today. 2021 for Jevon Dovey was the year of Sony.
The year of Sony.
First off, there's two aspects to this. I know we talked about it privately before. One is obviously the technology of the Sony cameras is incredible, top notch. But two, the way that Sony treats their creators and the way that they kind of interact with creators is so much better than all the other companies. And I wish other companies would kind of take note and start to listen to what people are wanting. I feel like Sony has actually served a lot of the requests that people have had, especially with those kind of lower end cameras like the ZV-1 and the ZV-E10, which are like totally just dedicated YouTuber cameras, really. It's pretty exciting. How was your year of Sony?
It's been great. I mean, the A7S III is like I said, it's the ideal camera for what I do. It's a camera that you can take anywhere, get low light footage, and with the lenses that I've chosen, it's a small, lightweight kit. But it's, Sony has really kind of made a camera for every user. And I don't really work with Sony yet. I've had some conversations with them, but my relationship with Sony is they brought me to Camera Camp. What was that, 2019? I was a Panasonic user back then, and I got to play with all the cameras then. And when the A7S III came out, I bought that. They actually loaned me one at first. I shot a film on that, which that experience using the camera, I was like, all right, great, I'm going to switch this. Like, this camera's awesome. Yeah. It was just a loaner, and then I went out and bought two of them, and then all the Sony lenses and everything else. So now I'm fully into the Sony's ecosystem.
That's kind of the intimidating thing for a lot of people who are coming from a whole nother system, is obviously like if you really want to get the full potential out of it, you do need to make a full switch. And you don't want to mix and match cameras because the sensors are different, the color science is different. It's a pain in the butt to try to like color match things. So if you're using multiple cameras like you do often, you kind of need to get at least 2, if not 3 or 4, especially for the multicam stuff you do.
I was going to say I have 5 now, but I have 2 A7S IIIs and 3 FX6s.
Wow. And you didn't opt for the FX3. Why not? A lot of people went with that one.
They call it a cinema camera. It's not really a cinema camera. You don't have time code, and which is like a huge thing for multicam productions. And also there's no shutter angle. Like, what a weird thing to have a cinema camera with no shutter angle. It's just because it's so much more useful when you have like these different things that are more built towards cinema, like ND filters built in, and having a body with all the buttons on it. Like the FX3 is great. I used it to make a short film earlier this year. Camera works great, but when I'm out, outside in bright sunlight, I like having an EVF. So like if they would have had, instead of a top handle, a second attachment that was an EVF, I would switch. But the EVF is huge in my world.
And the EVF in the A7S III is like top notch. It's like one of the best EVFs on the market. Then the FX6 for you has served you well as a cinema camera.
I mean, the FX6, I haven't really talked about it much on my channel, but I have 3 of them, and I use them for every shoot for my production company. And then if I need extra cameras, the A7S IIIs, matches up perfectly. But having those cameras, it's an easier camera to use on set. I pull it out of the box, I put on the lens, I can start shooting. I don't have to put these huge cages and everything around it. I don't have to build it out with extra batteries. The batteries on a cinema camera last a lot longer. So I have BPU 90s, and I use 1 or 2 of them a day, and I'm good.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's a different experience when you get into that kind of cinema world where you have all the features that you need on a camera body. I used FX9s for a while. Like I rented them and played around with them, and they had too much. I didn't need all that. Whereas the FX6 is the perfect happy medium. And then when you try to do 3 A7S IIIs or 3 FX6s and you don't have time code, it just becomes a mess. So the FX6, it was like the perfect camera for my production company. Now, I don't really use it for my YouTube channel, but if I do have a bigger project where it makes sense to have it, I'll probably bring it, because having the built-in ND filters is huge. Like,
and
if Sony would have
small too. It's not terribly
it's great.
big.
It reminds me of like the DVX 100 days back
Yeah.
when when I first started making
DVX
films in college.
DVX 100. Let's look that up.
Do you guys remember
Oh my
that
gosh.
camera or
Yeah.
the Canon XL2 or whatever?
Uh-huh.
It's that like documentary size camera. It's perfect.
The XL2 had that kind of like the white thing that
Yep.
kind of like went up and at an angle. Isn't
Yeah.
there's that one picture of you with the Blackmagic camera?
But that was a
floating around
built-out
the-
Blackmagic. Is it still online?
I can't find it.
Nothing is gone from online.
It's gone.
It's gone.
It's got to be somewhere.
It's
There it
probably
is.
there, so-
Why is
Oh,
that?
there it is.
That's like an early. That's like a very 1, 2,
Look at
3,
that
4,
setup.
5. Yeah, dude, look at that setup. Fit Live
Blackmagic 2.5K with the, what was that?
Alphatron,
Alphatron, that's right.
the EVF.
And then I used the whole wood. It was like I forgot what the brand was, but it's a wood shoulder rig to balance the camera so that it balanced perfectly on your shoulder.
I had that same camera. The color science on that camera was awesome.
Oh, I love it. I wish they would have kept that color science and then made new cameras that were 4K and whatever. But I mean, all cameras you can match nowadays are change with the bit rates and RAW and everything. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, bang for buck, Blackmagic is still like the best in terms of if you want just the best image quality for a cheap price, go with the Blackmagic camera. It's not even about image quality anymore though, because like I'm on the C70. I love the autofocus. I love the color, the size, and the Canon ecosystem that my cousins have all these lenses. So that's why I stuck with Canon this year. However, I may end up picking up an A7S III for myself this year now that I'm going freelance. So
What about the A7 IV that just came out?
yeah, I like that. I like the low light on the
Yeah.
S and some of the video
mean,
features.
The A7 IV probably still has decent low light. I haven't been able to test one yet. I'm a little frustrated that it crops in on 4K 60, and that bugs me because like I want to have full frame on that 4K 60 because I use slow motion a lot, and so for me that would be a limitation. That like it gets frustrating. That's one thing with the S5 from Panasonic. That one did the same thing where it crops in on 4K 60, and I'm like, well, it's frustrating because you have a lens on there. Say you're using like the 35. Well, if you want to shoot 4K 60, you all of a sudden now have a 50, and it's just like you're constantly thinking about that.
I'm sure they're going to sell a crap ton of those cameras. It's a good price for what it does. But it's a luxury to go up to the S3, I guess. But that's a luxury that I feel like as a very as a professional, a lot of those things I need, like the 4K 60 and the no overheating and all that stuff. So
yeah, I've saw on Twitter a lot of people are talking about when the screen is on the camera it overheats. Which it's going back to like issues with previous cameras that we had, and the A7S III, I've gotten the overheating warning to come up, but I've never had the camera shut off. So I've had some shoots where I've had to use my A7S III instead of my FX6 on some of my like productions, and we'd be running it for 10 hours, and I'd have that overheating coming up. And it would be up for like an hour, and it still wouldn't overheat and shut down. So,
oh wow, that's amazing.
Like I've seen this camera perform in ways where I'm like, it's looking like it's going to shut down, but it doesn't. So, everything I've thrown at it, this camera's been pretty amazing.
Have you enjoyed the switch in terms of the lenses and the lens lineup from Sony? You had a huge investment in Micro Four Thirds lenses.
Yep, big investment.
But you've completely switched over. Yeah, how have you liked that?
There's a few lenses that I really like from Sony's lineup. The 28 to 135 cinema lens. I know it's not a super popular lens for like the creator world, but it's just a great lens for like documentary and like run and gun. It's expensive, it's big, but using that with an FX6. But in terms of like my adventure stuff that I do and my YouTube channel, I basically bought the whole lineup of 1.8s. So the 20mm 1.8 is my go-to vlog lens. 35mm 1.8 is like my favorite just B-roll lens. Same with the 85 1.8. I have the 55 1.8, and it's frustrating because there's no manual autofocus on the lens itself. So I think I might switch up to the G Master for that, the 1.4.
The 50.
Yeah, the 50 is just, that's infuriating, not having a switch on the lens. I'm like, why is there no switch on the lens? And it's one of those things, like, you don't know until you use a piece of gear for a while. Like I'm like, this lens works great. I like the focal length. I like the 1.8's fine. I don't need a faster lens, but like,
yeah,
I struggle when I'm like switching between auto and manual, because I do that a lot of times depending on what I'm shooting, especially gimbal work. So that's one. But then for zoom lenses, I have 16 to 35, which I rarely use. My 24 to 105, which is kind of a good all-around lens, and then a 70 to 200, which I rarely use.
Why did you get those? If you don't, I mean, it's nice to have.
I thought I would
when you
use
have
them,
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's shoots where I bring them and they do come in handy, but like a lot of times I'm going out of a backpack, and so the 1.8s are tiny. They fit in the backpack. I don't mind using primes. I actually like the limitations because it forces me to like move and be more creative with how I'm interacting with my space rather than just zooming in a lens. So I'm making more conscious decisions on what I'm filming and what lens I'm using.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I think most people are envious about in terms of Sony versus all the other companies' mirrorless lineup is Sony's been so ahead of the game in terms of optics. They've been doing this A series, Alpha series for a while. So the whole, there's some great third-party options as well. The Tamron 28 to 75 2.8 is a fabulous lens as well. It's small and lightweight. They have a wide now, like a 17 to 28, and then I think like a 50 to 100 or something. So there's some great third-party options, whereas like Canon's RF lineup is just like super lackluster. You've got the trifecta of wide, medium, tight, zoom lenses and a couple of nice primes, but they're super big, they're overpriced, and there's no third-party options really.
I think this is where Sony really excels. I mean, beyond having tons of different camera options, but you have, the fast lenses if you want that super shallow depth of field or you need it below light. But then you have the medium, the 1.8s or the 2.5s, those little tiny lenses. You have like these different ranges, and so like depending on the style you shoot, the weight that you want to carry, and like what you need in terms of zoom, primes, they basically have everything. And then like you're saying, third party, there's just everything adapts to Sony. So there's a lot of options.
Yeah, I mean, Micro Four Thirds would probably be the other close second in terms of good lens lineups, but I just I unfortunately don't see that being as much of a solution anymore. I know Olympus has a new camera coming out, hopefully this year, that'll be decent. And then of course the GH6, which is highly anticipated, was announced. It was announced.
When is that camera coming?
I don't know. I don't know if they announced an actual release date. But the GH5 II came out this year, and the announcement of the GH6, which is a 5.67K 60p video camera with 10-bit 4K 120, $2,500, which is the same as the A7 IV. So,
it's the camera that we were waiting for with the GH5, but then we just kept waiting, and then Sony kind of came out and just released all these cameras in the same in this time period. I did a video with Panasonic on the S5. And when I was talking to the Panasonic rep, they're like, the GH6 is coming, and like, get excited. And I'm like, how long has that been now since the S5 release?
It's been a long time.
It's been a while.
And the size advantage isn't as much of a thing anymore either. Like Sony, like you were just saying, those 1.8 primes that you use are literally the exact same size as the Olympus Pro primes that we both owned and used with the EM1 series. Yeah. So
and the primes on Olympus were heavy. The Sony ones, the 1.8s are light. So like you actually are carrying less with the Sony, and all their bodies are. It's a full frame
sensor. The sensor is 4 times bigger. It's nuts.
It's nuts. It's just there's no competition at this point. Like I think you could kind of pick your company. Like if you want to work with Canon glass and Canon lenses, like obviously you're going to stick with Canon, or there's Sony. I just don't, I guess maybe some other ones are Fuji.
Nikon. I mean, there's
Nikon,
a couple of Nikon fanboys out there, and obviously the new Nikon Z9, which was announced, looks really promising. But it's Nikon. Like it's just not. They're just not there in terms of ecosystem. And if you're a freelance shooter, buy a Sony camera because most people in your town probably are shooting on Sony. So like, if you buy a Nikon and you show up on set, it's like, I'll bring my gear. It's like, no, we don't want you to use that. Like.
Well, it's interesting. Like you were saying earlier, Sony has really, they're making cameras for creators. They're actually listening to what we need. All different parts of, a creator, all different types of creators. Whereas like Nikon, I feel like, I don't feel like they're really understanding what creators need. And I'm not talking just like YouTube creators. I'm talking about filmmakers, all the way from filmmakers down to people who are shooting themselves in, their room, just doing this kind of stuff. You look at Nikon's lineup and there's just features missing that are like kind of essential. And, their lens light up is not, it's getting better. When I did a project with Nikon, they had a set of 1/8s that were small and lightweight, and they're actually all the exact same size. And I actually enjoyed working with the Nikon. I just wish I had a flip screen because I do vlog style content when I'm out. I don't need to see myself, but it is nice. Like I'd rather choose a camera that has a flip screen.
It's got this little side flip thing going on. It just proves that they're making it for photographers and journalists and whatever.
Yeah.
But it has some great video features on it. 8K 30p, 4K 120, 10-bit. I think it's also doing ProRes RAW internal. Is that right? I think that was one of the big selling points. It's doing ProRes.
I think another big
cool.
I was going to say another big distinction though is like Sony is actually having a conversation directly with creators. Like coming from my side of things where I actually talk to these camera brands, like Nikon, they contact me through a PR company who doesn't really understand what I do and is just kind of trying to get a camera in my hands and get me to promote it on my channel. Whereas Sony, recently I've been having conversations with Sony more directly, and they'll call me up and just chat and just be like, what are you into? What are you working on right now? Is there any way that we can work together, that we can help you make the content you want to make? So it's a very different relationship. And this is something that I've been kind of, I've been moving away from working with companies that just want straight promotion on my channel. Because there are those companies that they just reach out and they're like, can you put a video on your channel about these filters? And I'm like, no, I don't want to just put a video on my channel about your filters. Like that's not very exciting for me. It's not something I personally want to do. I don't just want to be a marketing tool for these companies. Whereas like someone like Insta360, they'll be like, what kind of video do you want to make? I'm like, I want to make a climbing film. They're like, great. So we want to promote the go-to. So how can we make this work? And then I come up with a pitch them, and they, will sponsor it. So there are companies out there that are really focused on creator first and focusing on like what the creator wants to do versus like just getting their product in front of that creator's audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that you've been working on this year. I mean, you just talked about it, but figuring out ways to essentially get these companies to sponsor a film so that you can actually go do your passion, which is these amazing travel films and do these crazy experiences. And it's awesome that you can actually kind of figure out ways to bankroll that to where it makes sense to actually go on a trip. They get all this amazing footage of not a guy just in his basement behind a desk. You're actually going out and using the product. Yeah, there it is, the Mavic.
Mavic 3. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of how I'm approaching, gear reviews moving forward, is like, how can I build a relationship with a company of a product that I'm interested in or something that I actually use and show it in real world settings. Because, in the long term, those kind of videos show more benefits. Like me sitting here talking about a product and being like, oh, it has 5.1K. It looks good. Like it's not going to do, that's not going to help move the needle with sales. It might, but if I'm like, hey, here's how I actually use this drone, and this is something that I actually stand behind. Well, that more people are going to be, it's more of on honest review. Even if it's sponsored, I don't want to take on sponsorships and just be promoting things that are like, things that I wouldn't actually promote, if there wasn't money behind it. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't have to get too much into it, but you've been creating some courses on Skillshare and seeing some real success with that as a alternate way to just another stream of income.
Yeah. I've been trying to figure out ways to not be focused on sponsorships and only take on ones where it's like, if somebody comes, say if Sony wanted to do a sponsorship with me on my channel, well, I already use Sony and that'd be a perfect partnership. One I'm working on right now is with Goal Zero. So I use their big 1500X battery in my overland rig. And we're working together on a sponsorship. I just drove through Death Valley on this big trip. I just got back from it. And their battery is what I used to power my vehicle when I wasn't, driving. And so it's like a perfect bridge where like they sponsored the video so I could go do this trip. And it's natural for me to talk about it because it's a product that I'm already using. So it's kind of like the perfect combination. Even though it's a sponsorship, I would still do content around this product.
Totally. So changing gears to products, unless were you about to talk about something else? Sorry.
I mean, this Death Valley video, my Jeep broke. That was fun.
Yes. Tell us about that, because it's quite a dramatic situation. You could tell us the story in a nutshell. It's nuts.
I feel like all my videos recently that are like the adventure films have been like something bad happens, and it's something bad has happened every time. I'm not making these stories up. It's like, okay, well, this did happen. Great. Now we have a storyline. Unfortunately, but at the same time, when you take a step back, those end up making better videos.
What was the latest bad happening?
Yeah, my brake rotor broke on one of my tires, and so I couldn't drive my car. I was 40 miles into Death Valley, just in the middle of nowhere. So that was fun. Where it was like the sun had just set, my brake rotor was broken. We're pulling my tire off, and like we're trying to figure out what the clunking sound is. And then like I found that my brakes were broken, but also, I was missing a sway bar nut, and then my rim was cracked. Like there was a lot of things broken. And we were nowhere near town. So we got my Jeep to some hot springs, camped there for the night, and then we got it out. My Jeep is just in the shop now, but like, yeah, these things, going on adventures, it's just like, yeah, it's fun, but there is stuff that happens.
Thankfully, there's guys out there with tow trucks that are literally there for people like you, right? Like it ended up working out, but
it worked out.
It was a little bit of a headache, I'm sure.
But yeah, I mean, if you want to go to these cool places and film, like there is that danger. Climbing a mountain isn't the safest activity. Overlanding through Death Valley isn't necessarily the safest activity. So you just got to kind of weigh what kind of risks you're willing to take.
Totally.
But let's switch to some gear.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on some of the things that came out this year in 2021. Starting off with the Rode Wireless Go 2. I know that you ended up picking up one of those and may have been replaced with another product that we can get to. But I personally bought 2 sets, so I have 4 of them. And I was using them almost on a weekly basis at my job. And for half the year, they were great. And then the second half, I ended up having some issues. I don't know if I ever talked to you about it, but a couple of them started having popping sounds, just like sporadically. And then one in particular, like, would do this weird robotic sound effect or something. It almost sounded like there was like a radio interference, but I don't know if it was radio interference from another person, like a pilot or a police officer, but it was like the weirdest thing. So I actually need to send both sets in the Rode to get repaired because I've had some issues with them. I don't trust them. So that's my review.
Question for you. Was that on the backup recording?
Yes, the robotic sound effect was on the backup recording and the pops as well. So I'm like, what's the point of the backup if it's just recording? Like I was assuming all that was just radio interference. I went into the recording and it's there. So I have proof to send to Rode when I send it in for them to listen to what was going on with it. But, I haven't heard anybody really complain about it like my experience. Maybe I just got some bad ones, or I beat them to the ground too much. But you know, you I think you used yours for essentially half the year, right?
Yeah, I think they're a great tool. I've also had issues, but mine were different. I've had corruption issues with backup files, which was very unfortunate because the backup file got corrupted, and then the file that was recorded to camera, I also had issues because of interference. So it was like two things happening at the same time, and I lost the audio for something that I thought I had a backup for. So yeah, I mean, I've had issues. They're not a perfect tool, and you know, long term they do have an internal battery, so who knows how long they'll actually last. But
yeah, and I think you and I are using them in a very rugged, professional way. Oh, I heard that.
Yep.
You okay?
Hold on. Spilled coffee on my computer.
Are you serious? Oh my gosh! If you need to turn off, seriously, if you need to turn your computer off.
It's not a lot.
This has been a pretty eventful podcast for you.
Yeah, nothing like dropping coffee on a $5,000 computer.
Do you have AppleCare on it?
I do.
There you go.
Always buy AppleCare.
Oh yeah, especially on portable things that you can drop.
This is
and
why
spill things on.
I liked having the 13-inch M1 that was like a base model, because like I didn't care as much. Now with like a $5,000 machine, like you have to be. I mean,
but hey, the microphones sound great.
Okay, great. So. Yeah, I mean the computer's great. I just finished DJI Mavic 3 Beginner's Guide. Like I put that up on Christmas. It hour and 24 minutes long, and every shot is color graded. Every shot is 10-bit 422. Every shot has graphics and multiple layers, and like the computer just like chewed through the footage. I didn't have to proxy anything. I didn't have to, you know, I didn't have to do anything besides drop the footage on and start editing. It was amazing.
Well, I'm sitting here with, I think, an identical machine. I don't know if did you max it out all the way?
Yep.
Pretty much.
So 4 terabyte hard drive. So everything else
here.
is maxed out.
Yeah, so I have the 16-inch, but everything's maxed out, and I agree, it's been nuts, but it's a little overkill, honestly. Like, I don't even think I'm tapping the potential of it. But
I was curious if this project would have worked on the Pro model. So I'm considering buying the base model, like the one under the Max, and just doing some side-by-side editings with like these projects that are super long and lots of graphics. I think it'd be interesting to see. Yeah.
Well, it's important. Yeah, I think you should try it, because if it's the same or very marginal, then you could actually make money selling your used laptop now, because they're so back-ordered. I think if you were to configure a maxed out version, I think you're looking at March or April to get it. So I've noticed they're selling for about $500 more than they're worth new, just because people want them now, you know?
Yeah.
So
I'm glad I got one. So
I've been considering selling this and going to a base model just to save $1,000, but I'm kind of like, I may just hold on to it, because it's going to last me 5 years if I just hold on to it, you know?
Yeah, and if you don't drop coffee on it.
Although I got silver because my cousins required it, because their brand is a little bit more light and airy and not masculine and space gray. And that's the main thing. I'm like, I don't like the silver. I want the space gray. It's so
space gray's
stupid.
nice.
It's so dumb that I would consider selling this laptop just because I don't like the color, but that's where I'm at, because I'm superficial.
They really need to come out with like a matte black.
Oh my gosh,
space gray.
Well, that's what dbrand is for. They do have a really nice matte black, I guess. Where were we? We were talking about the Wireless Go, and you know, one thing that I think is interesting to note about the Wireless Go 2 is it's sort of like the original Wireless Go version 1 was so revolutionary. It was really kind of the first 2.4 gigahertz Bluetooth tiny little thing with the built-in microphone, and then it just like it literally, that was the first one, and then every random Chinese manufacturer you could imagine emulated that, and then all of a sudden now there's like 100 of those tiny little microphones, And then the Wireless Go 2 came out, and that was like, oh, there's two now on the left and right stereo recording. And I think there were a couple that were already doing that before the Rode. But once that happened, then again, all these Chinese manufacturers like are doing left-right dual tiny little things, which is good. Like, competition is good. You don't have to spend the extra $100 for the Rode version. There are great knockoff brands I've seen some reviews of, but when it comes to like professional on a shoot, a $20,000 production, or in my case, even with Amy and Jordan, we're doing these courses. Like, I literally have to make sure that my audio is good, because we will not ever be able to reshoot this thing. I was relying on these all year, and they failed me a handful of times. And for 2022, I'm considering maybe just ponying up and spending $500-$600 on some sort of like high quality professional wireless system, because I do not want to deal with kind of the headaches of these things crapping out on me all the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's important. Like, I wouldn't use the Rode Wireless Go on my production company shoots. They just like there is that kind of factor of like, well, things could go wrong with it. Like, I've used it in settings where I'm just run and gun quick. But we always hire on a sound guy with like professional level equipment, because it is important. Like, you need to trust your equipment. And, I've had my issues with the Rode Ghost as well. So like, I can't trust it fully for making YouTube videos. For the majority of what I shoot, that's not for my production company. Like, yeah, they work fine.
They're super convenient. Yeah, they're very convenient.
They're so small. However, DJI came out with their own version that's even more convenient, and that comes with a charging case.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. That's one of the products that came out this year. It came out kind of alongside the 4D, I think, in the Mavic 3.
And nobody was really talking about it. So it was released, but they didn't really get the product in creators' hands. So people weren't really making videos. DJI reached out to me and they're like, hey, we got this mic, like a few weeks later. And they're like, do you want to do a video on it? And I was like, I'd love to just test them out. So I went and played around with them. And I'm like, these are great. These are everything the Rode Wireless Go 2, like all the things I wanted out of that. Because, you have a charging case. Charging case is great. You have the ability you have a touch screen on the device itself. So you're not having to use like button clicks, and you can actually see everything on this touch screen. And the screen actually faces you. So instead of being up on top of the receiver, it's on the side or on the front and back, and you can rotate it. So if you're behind camera, you can see it. If you're in front of camera, you can rotate it and see it. And then finally, when you bring it onto your computer, you can just grab all the files and drag them over. You don't have to go through and export one at a time, which I know Rode did fix.
They just fixed that.
They did. But you still have to go through their software and export it, whereas the DJI mic pops up as a folder, and you just drag them over.
So there's a legal reason why, and I am speculating here. I posted a tweet about it when the Rode Wireless Go 2s came out, and Curtis Judd responded and confirmed my suspicion. But there's a company, you know the name of it, right? There's a company that Zaxcom. They own this patent that has plagued the filmmaking audio community for years. Basically, it makes complete sense. Like, why wouldn't a wireless pack, a wireless lavalier pack, like even before the Wireless Go existed, why wouldn't there be the ability to record a backup locally? That just makes total sense. Like, obviously, there's no interference. You could just use a tiny little micro SD card, or even 10 years ago, you could have used an SD or even a CF card. It doesn't matter. Why wouldn't some company come up with that? It's because this freaking company owns a patent on it, and nobody has been able to do it.
It's like a 20-year patent or something. I mean, we've, with our production company, we've worked with Zaxcom Wireless in the past when we worked with audio guys, and it's, we would use those because of the backup recording. I shoot a lot of fitness, and like people would be sweaty. We'd have transmission issues. So it like always saved us, but everyone else can't use that because of this patent. And companies would try, but they would charge so much for the license to use it that companies would just say, screw it. And so I think what happened with Rode is they found a workaround, And now that they're doing that, other companies are challenging, just because like a company like DJI is so big, they can just challenge the, if the Zaxcom comes after them, which I don't even know if they can, because it's a Chinese company versus a Zaxcom, which I think is a US company. I don't know off the top of my head, but
well, so like just for reference, guys, like a Zaxcom pack is like $1,500, $2,000 each, just for
the
a pack.
issue is Zaxcom are very they're not easy to use. So like if you try to buy a system, I've priced it out before because we've had this issue where we need backup recordings. And if you want like a full system for like one or two with some, backups, it's like $11,000 to get all the pieces that you need. And it just doesn't make sense with how it all works. Like it's just not a simple system. It's geared towards professional audio users, which is great if you're working on feature films. But if you're someone who's like documentary run and gun and you just need backup recording when you're doing something out in the field, well, like their system doesn't make sense, or it's, too expensive.
And it's a total like screw you too, because they can. Yep. They own the patent, so they charge $3,000 per unit because they can. And it's like, hey Hollywood, guess what? I know you need this. We're gonna charge you an arm and a leg. I mean, I'm sure they don't sell a lot of units. It's really unfortunate business decision. They probably could have been a leader in the community if they actually were smart and made consumer level versions of this. But whatever. Rode challenged them with the Wireless Go 2, and the workaround, I think, was that software. The fact that you had to export it from their software kind of made it, probably a loophole around their patent. Curtis Judd, the sound expert on YouTube, he confirmed that suspicion on Twitter with me. And like you said, DJI now basically is, I think, probably infringing on their patent, because it's literally saving directly to the device. You plug it in and it's as if you're using a memory card. Or maybe the loophole is the fact that it's internal memory and you can't, maybe the loophole is the fact that the other one is using removable memory like a SD card. But all that all that being said, as of right now, the DJI mic seems to be the best kind of all around if you want a cheap consumer level, tiny little lavalier kit, because it's got that charging case, it's got the screen, like you said, and the ease of use. But have you used it extensively enough to confirm or deny whether or not it's giving you some of the same issues you had with the Rode in terms of dropouts and interference, or you just haven't had enough time with it yet?
I mean, I haven't had enough time with it. I mean, if you're watching the video, it's right here. Look how small this is. I mean, this is amazing. But I haven't had any of the same issues. But like I said, I've only used it, for a few weeks now. But I have used it on basically every video recently. And, the audio straight out of it, it's a little bit muffled. Like you do a little EQ to it, and it sounds great. I did a video on the DJI mic. It's actually performing super well. I was surprised that video performed as well as it did. But a lot of people are like, "Oh, that audio sounds bad. Why didn't you EQ it?" And I was like, "Well, because I want you to hear what it actually sounds like out of the mic. And yes, if you do a little EQ, you can make it sound good." I use Acusonus, and there's like an auto EQ feature, and you put a little, you play with it a little bit, and you can make the mic sound great. So I'm happy with it. Just for the ease of use and like the ability to have that backup recording. If you scroll towards like the end of that video, you'll see I'm like, I did a lot where I was really far away from the camera. So I'd be like on one ridgeline and I would walk all the way to another ridgeline. And most of the time it would stay connected, but having that backup recording just helps if there is dropouts.
San Clemente. I miss it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. San Clemente's amazing.
I love that pier right there, and that train that goes by. There's that. Have you been to that? There's that restaurant on the pier there, the Fisherman something or other.
Yeah, that's a cool little spot.
The clam chowder is excellent there. I don't know
San Clemente is such a hidden gem. So it's part of Orange County, which you think Orange County, you think super busy, you think overpopulated. But San Clemente has kept to like that small town vibe. And there's nowhere to expand because you have Camp Pendleton to the south. And then you have like natural wilderness area to the east. And then there's really nowhere to build north. So it's like basically there's not a lot of land left, but it still feels like a small town. And there's tons of beaches, some of the best surfing in California. I mean, it's insane.
I mean, I was lived in Laguna Niguel for 2 years, and that's pretty close. And Dana Point, Laguna Niguel, I mean, it's gorgeous. It's
a nice little pocket down here. Like you have San Juan Capistrano, Dana Point, and San Clemente, and like it doesn't feel like the rest of Orange County.
No, I loved it, and if it's very family friendly. If it's safe, it's a good environment. It's also expensive as heck now.
It's crazy. My house value like skyrocketed after we moved in. Like we bought in San Clemente, for what we paid for a big house here, we would have gotten a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment in LA at the time. And then the prices just exploded. So like we moved at the perfect time before everyone rushed out of LA.
Perfect.
It was
you got the perfect size home too, because you may not have realized it, but you were gonna, now you're having another child. Yeah. So like the fact that you made room for that already is awesome. You don't have to move.
Yeah, I mean it's wild. We have a 5-bedroom, but one of the bedrooms is this, my office, and then our master bedroom, and then the 2 kids' rooms.
That's great.
So that's oh yeah, and then my wife has an office. So yeah, we have 5 bedrooms. I was like, "Where's that 5th one?" Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean 5-bedroom. Same here. I mean, I'm in a 5-bedroom rental right now, but I know these only sell for, I think like 400. So a 5-bedroom in Nashville is 400,000.
Well, it's crazy in California. You can't even find anything in like the 800-900 range anymore, like in Orange County. Like you could
ridiculous.
a year ago, but now it's like you're spending over $1 million just for anything. It's wild.
Yeah, everybody who's from LA or Northern California, they're all either going out of the state or going into Orange County.
Yeah, it's all the people that can't leave the state or that want to, live by the beach still. They're moving south.
Yeah.
So we've, when we were looking in our neighborhood, there was tons of inventory. There was a lot of options. And now there's like a couple houses available. And we keep seeing people from San Francisco come and buy. And like to them, it's a deal. Even though the prices are high, like they're super high for us, we couldn't buy here now, but it's a deal for people coming from San Fran and some of these, really expensive areas.
All right, let's bang through some of these other things here. The Ronin 4D, that was like when that camera gimbal came out, for me, that was the only time all year that I don't want to use the word jealous, but I was like missing being a YouTuber, because that is such a thing that I would love to make a video about. My mind just exploded with the possibility of the creativity. To me, I see it as sort of like a shift in technology. Like we had, going from a Steadicam to a gimbal, and the kind of technological leap that we went to when the original Movi came out with Vincent Laforet and kind of that whole wave of gimbals. Now, in my opinion, this is sort of like the next level from DJI, combining LiDAR technology with a camera mounted onto the gimbal itself. This is real exciting, because if we see more of this type of stuff from DJI in the future, it could really change the whole game, because now you're not having to mount cameras on the gimbal. The gimbal is the camera. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's a cool system. Like I had a chance to take it. Well, I had it with me one day in Alaska, but then I had a chance to take it to Utah when I was overlanding, and I used it in that setting. And it is bigger. It is kind of bulky. It's like it's like the size of a toaster, I guess. But like, I think it's an amazing camera to use. There's just so much possibility with it, and the footage is so smooth, and like the ProRes that I was using out of it could grade super easily, and it just looks nice. Like when I was out shooting with it, I was like, is this too big? Is it too bulky? Is there too much going on? And then when I had to send it back to DJI, I switched back to my A7S III with my RS2, and I have a whole tilt-a-ring setup for it. And I realized that the Ronin 4D just simplifies it. So with my RS2 setup, I'm constantly dealing with balancing the camera, and then I have to turn on the camera, I have to turn on the gimbal, I have to turn on the ring because it's not a DJI ring, it's a third party. So I have 4 different buttons that I have to turn on, and then the bigger monitor is another button, so it ends up being 5. So I'm constantly thinking about 5 different things. Are they powered on? Is memory clear? Do I have enough battery? And I realized that like the 4D is just so simple. Like you turn it on, you have this big touch screen. It takes a little bit to power up, but 15 seconds, and then you can start filming. So like when I was returning the 4D, I was thinking about, I was like, would I actually buy one of these? I wasn't sure. But then after going back, I'm like, yeah, this is a camera that I actually want. Like I want to use this. And there's a time and place for it. Like it is bigger, it's bulkier. If I'm overlanding and I can carry that gear with me, it's great. But if I'm hiking, I'd rather have my A7S III and a smaller gimbal.
But
so it depends
you might
on
be able
what
to,
you're shooting.
in terms of like the gear that you own, you could in theory sell your whole gimbal setup and maybe a camera or something and a lens that you would dedicate as a gimbal like setup and put that towards that, and it's the same price, and it's just going to be so much easier to pull it out of the bag and just go. Just having a dedicated gimbal setup at all times is great. I know for me, when I was doing freelance stuff, I would always have like a shoulder cam or like a monopod camera, and then another camera that was often the exact same camera, just mounted always in the Movi, just ready to go whenever, because it's just such a pain to like take it on and off all the time. So it's pretty exciting for sure. And the LiDAR stuff, did you play around with that at all? The kind of the focusing stuff with LiDAR?
So I had a very limited time to work with the camera because they sent it to me, the shipping got messed up. Like I was supposed to have it for longer. But I took it out to Utah and I basically had one lens. I had the 35 millimeter from DJI. I could use some of my Sony lenses, but I didn't really have enough time to really practice and figure out how to make everything work properly. So I basically just used that 35 millimeter and just used it as a run and gun type of camera. And it's just pretty impressive the type of footage I was able to get out of it. So like, yeah, there's a lot of potential with it and there's a lot to unlock. I think it's something that like you need to have for a while and you really need to work with it. But I think having that LiDAR just opens up a lot of possibilities. The only, I guess, downside is that you can only use small lenses on it. So you're not going to be able to put these big lenses on it that you might want to. You really have to be limited with what you can put on front of that gimbal, because the gimbal's pretty small.
Yeah, and I guess you're right. It depends on your use case. But the lenses are great, and most people will probably be able to get that to work. And I think it'll probably carry down too. We'll probably see some sort of 4D alternate that's a cheaper, smaller unit. They just had to start on the super high end to get the technology out there, to get that in the hands of the filmmakers, and kind of get some research and development for the next year or two while they potentially develop something that's maybe a little more approachable for normal people. They had that original Osmo thing, the little ball camera that like would do, I think it did 4K RAW. And then obviously they've had all this experience with the cameras that they've been putting on the drones. So I'm definitely not I would expect that they're going to have some sort of cheaper version, like a Super 35 version or something. I don't know, but we'll see. But it's very cool technology.
It's unique, and I think DJI is really pushing the boundaries in the drone technology, but also like putting out these types of cameras. Like they're just different than what everyone else is doing.
And then let's end it on our gear talk with the drone / camera that's been sitting on the table there this whole time, the Mavic 3. This we both knew that this would be big for your channel, and we have to just wait and see how many views you get on your beginner's guide video. I'm sure it'll be over 1 million by the time we talk again next year. We'll
maybe see. The issue with the Mavic 3 is the price, and I've seen this in my comments. People are really frustrated that it's so expensive.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's an expensive drone. But it is a pro. I see it as a pro level drone. But with it, it's like if you don't want to spend, I mean, what is the cost of it? It's 3,000. DJI Mavic 3.
Let me just click the link in your description.
Oh, thank you. It's
Dude,
hard to like.
You don't have like a link in the beginner's
not?
guide to buy the drone.
I do. It says get the Mavic 3.
Get them. It's a little hidden. I would want to see that top.
Yeah, it's $3,000 with the Fly More combo.
Okay. Yeah,
it's
that's pricey.
$21.99 for just a single battery, which you could get away with because the battery lasts so long. But you definitely want the Fly More combo. So $3,000 for that, and then obviously $5,000 for the Cine version, which gives you, the ProRes, and then also you get that remote control with it, the RC Pro, which it's a bummer that the RC Pro, you have to get that to work with this drone. You can't use the original smart controller. So and that RC Pro is like $1,300. So if you want to get the non-Cine version, which this one with the Fly More combo, and then the RC Pro, you're still looking at like $4,500. It's crazy.
It's a lot of money.
It is. So I think there's a lot of people that are frustrated with how expensive the setup is. Because it's but the Air
DJI
2S is fantastic, and that's so much cheaper.
I think that's the argument that you can make now, though, is like DJI makes other drones. Like it's the Apple conversation. You just spilled coffee on a $5,000 laptop. I'm using a $5,000 laptop. You don't have to buy a $5,000 laptop. You can buy a MacBook Air with the M1 chip in it, and it's going to be $1,000, and it's actually going to perform really well too, just like the Air 2. And
I mean, like I'm gonna pay the money for this laptop because this is a tool that I use every day, and I want the
and you want to spill coffee on it.
We'll do that. Now, when it comes to the
we'll
Mavic
have to follow
3,
up, make sure you don't have any issues, water damage. But the Mavic 3, like the Phantom series, I think is now officially like nail in the coffin.
I think so. I don't think they're going to do another Phantom. So this was kind of the replacement of like that middle ground between, the Air 2S and the Inspire. Like this is the middle.
Yeah.
So this is going to be used on pro shoots. That's why they have the Cine version. But also it's geared towards the consumer as well, for anybody who wants just like creators who just want a powerful drone with a great camera. I mean, the 4/3 sensor looks great. The footage that I've been shooting that's H.264 like looks fine, and color grading works great, and it looks really good. You don't need the Cine version, but like I was saying, it's getting expensive when you're getting all the components. It's not a cheap drone.
Can you just give me the bullet points on the differences between the two, and some of the features that you really like about them?
Yeah. So the Mavic 3, the sensors, on the side, that's like one of the biggest things. So like if you're following a subject,
avoidance.
Yeah, the obstacle avoidance. So if you're following a subject and a tree comes from your side, you're not going to run into that tree. With the Air 2S, you're going to run into that tree. And I've done that multiple times where I've been flying the Air 2S and I've run into something because it doesn't have obstacle avoidance on the sides. So a lot of times when you want to create, cool shots, cinematic shots, however you want to say it, you don't necessarily always want to be front and back. Like you want to be off to the side, or you want to be rotating. So it's a much better level of security when you're flying the Mavic 3. And I've been testing this with the Active Track that they've just released. It's not perfect yet, but the obstacle avoidance works super well. I think Active Track has some room to improve, but it's definitely gotten much better over time. It's weird though, like DJI released this drone and it's not a completed drone. All the software still has more updates. Like you go into the app, you try to use pano mode right now, it says function not available. You try to use quick shots, it says function not available. They just released Active Track, which I did a video on. And like I said, I think they're going to improve it so that, there's certain parts of it that just aren't as stable as I'd want them to be. But it is what it is.
And I mean, the 360-degree obstacle avoidance, though, was on the Pro, the Pro 2, right? The Mavic 2
No,
Pro
the Air 2S. Or yeah, the Pro 2, the original Mavic 2 Pro
whatever it's
has
called.
a 360, but the Air 2S only has forward, backwards, up and down.
I think that's probably one of the issues, if you will, that maybe people have is people who own. A lot of people bought that Mavic 2 Pro when that came out with the Hasselblad sensor on it, and I still think it looks great. I mean, it's a 1-inch sensor. The color's great. It does 10-bit. It's got the 360 optical avoidance. The new Mavic 3, like, even though it is amazing, like even more amazing, is it really worth it for some of those people who are maybe in that kind of in between? Maybe you just shoot weddings. Maybe you just kind of shoot little things here and there. You're not doing like full on, Hollywood level stuff. Is it really worth it to spend $5,000 on the Mavic 3? Probably not.
Probably not. But the issue is those drones are starting to get a little dated. So if they still work well. But if you want the latest and greatest, now you're going from, a couple $1,000s to $5,000. Like it's a huge jump.
Yeah.
But
and I wonder if they're going to do a new Inspire this coming year as well. I mean, obviously, again, there's a lot of delays on technology because of COVID, but the Inspire 2 is kind of long in the tooth now. It's been around for a while, maybe 4 or 5 years almost at this point.
Yeah, I think with the 4D, I think that camera is what's going to be used on the Inspire, whatever the new one is, because you can take that whole unit off the front.
Good point.
And so I think you're going to be able to pop that off and put it on a drone.
Yeah, totally. I think they kind of did that with the Ronin 2, right? Could you do that? I don't know. No, you couldn't do that because the Inspire 2 had a built-in camera. But
yeah,
cool. Well, Jevin, we took so much of your time. Well over an hour because of our technical difficulties and water spillage. Thank you so much for coming on the Golden Hour podcast. Always a pleasure. I'm sure I'll talk to you tomorrow on the phone, but thank you for joining us. Is there anything that you'd like to leave with our listeners who are, inspired by you, want to maybe get out there and start traveling as well, maybe start a YouTube channel this year? Obviously, coming into January, we've all got New Year's resolutions. What are some tips and things you'd want to share with our listeners?
I guess one big thing would be, we talked about this earlier, but be realistic with yourself. Don't jump on YouTube thinking that you're going to be doing this kind of content that you really can't do because of limitations of time and the situation you're in. Just give yourself a break. Like, you don't have to be Mr. Beast level right out of the gate. I think we can all find the kind of content that resonates with us, that we enjoy making, and we can figure out a way to do it that fits into our lifestyle, rather than seeing these travel YouTubers that are circling the globe and they have they don't have to be home ever. Not everyone can do that. So just be realistic with yourself.
100%. Be realistic going into 2022. Jevin, a pleasure as always. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to the Golden Hour podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Dave Mays. We'll see you next time.